Hello and welcome everyone to this edition, our final edition of WFAE's Songversations. Today is Thursday, August 27th, 2020. I'm Joni Deutsch, and again, I'm your host for today's Songversations, the live video series from WFAE, where we highlight the voices and perspectives, the songs and stories of the Charlotte music scene from the comfort of home during COVID-19 and the stay-at-home mandate. Over the past 5 months, Songversations has sat down with more than 40 musicians and music advocates who've shared songs of resilience and their stories of creativity during quarantine. You can watch the full playlist of Songversations right now at facebook.com/WFAE. As I mentioned, today marks the final edition of Songversations, the final live video broadcast of the series. For now, WFAE has some exciting podcast projects coming up, including the very first Charlotte Podcast Festival, which you can find out more on charlottepodcastfestival.com. As WFAE's lead a podcast, that means my ears are needed elsewhere. But the music is still happening in our community. So even though the series will be over, you can still go out and support and see, or at the very least stay at home and enjoy music from Charlotte. But we still have this next hour together of Songversations. It's not over just yet. We just enough time to explore the Charlotte music scene one more time with this video series from the comfort of home with today's very special guest. I'm so happy that for this final broadcast, we have on two individuals who represent Charlotte music. We have Lonnie Davis, the president and CEO of Jazz Arts Charlotte, and also jazz musician Troy Conn. Lonnie and Troy, hi, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Joni, thank you so much for having us. This is great. Wow, the pressure is on. This is it, right?
I know. The bar is set pretty high for you all to just hop over.
Yes, wow, we have to make this good, Troy. Let's do it.
All right, the pressure's on. All right, I'm ready.
All right, so you put feet to the fire. We're going to make sure this is a good one for everyone out there joining us. Of course, on this final edition of Songversations, we are talking with Troy and Lonnie about their work in Charlotte music and Charlotte jazz music, and also just what they've been up to during quarantine to still continue the songs and also music education from afar. And we're also going to be answering your questions. So if you have any questions to share with Troy and Lonnie, if you have any music memories from the last time you saw them and their work live, by all means, put your questions, your comments, your stories in the comments below on facebook.com/WFAE. And we're also streaming live on WFAE.org. With that said, folks, Songversations, we're not only talking, we're also listening to live music. We have here Troy on the guitar. Troy, you have a few songs that you're going to be performing this next hour. And the very first one is going to be Pure Imagination. You selected it yourself. Tell us why you wanted to perform it today.
This is a song, I've played this one for years. These solo arrangements, they constantly evolve, but I've been playing it a lot at home, and it's kind of surreal, and it kind of fits kind of the surreal mood maybe that a lot of us are feeling this moment and this time. So so I guess that's the reason. And,
all right,
I just like the tune, so I think it's a fun one to play. So.
That sounds good to us. So why don't we go ahead and hear Troy Conn, his rendition of Pure Imagination here on WFAE's Songversations. Pure Imagination. That was so lovely, so sweet on this Thursday. Performed here by Troy Conn. Of course, you probably remember that rendition all the way back in 1971 when it first came out. So happy to have Troy Conn here, a musician in the Charlotte area, also Charlotte native in his own right, joined by Lonnie Davis, the president and the CEO of Jazz Arts Charlotte. We're talking about music. We're listening to live music. And if you're wondering where you can find out more about Troy Conn's work, you can listen to his original music, maybe not Pure Imagination covers, from his 2018 full length, which is titled Old and New. You can find it on troyconn.com and on your favorite streaming platforms. Again, joining here for today's live Songversations. If you have any comments, if you have any questions or music memories you'd like to share on this, our final Songversations broadcast, feel free to put them in the comments below. We'll try to get around to them later on in the program. So Troy and Lonnie, again, welcome. And of course, we are talking about music and listening to music at a time where it's been virtually impossible to see it in person. That's why virtually it's so important that we're on for everyone to be able to stream and watch from home. Lonnie, what were your plans at Jazz Arts? What were you up to last year? What were your plans for this year with your nonprofit?
Thank you so much, Joni. I just want to thank you again for having us. And this is such an honor to be on the show, the final show. But to get to your question, last year, around this time, we had just launched our 10th anniversary campaign. And so we're actually in our 11th year now, but we had just launched our 10th anniversary campaign for Jazz Arts. We were coming, off of this huge celebration. We had brought, the jazz ambassador of the world, Mr. Wynn Marsalis, down to help us to celebrate that, and had launched our new website and some new programs, including the Weebop program for preschoolers, an intro to jazz for the very little ones, and that's kind of where we were at this time. We were maybe in season 12 of Jazz Room, and really, getting prepared to have a great fall session last year, and so pre-COVID, right before the storm hit. Well, the storm, as you hear where my mind is right now. It's in the Gulf Coast, but I'll speak about that a little bit later. But pre-COVID, we were certainly planning some exciting things for the spring and for the summer. But of course, we have made different plans. That's kind of where we were at that time. But you have to adjust, and so that's what we found ourselves trying to do.
Yeah. And so in terms of adjusting, for those who may not be familiar with the work of Jazz Arts Charlotte, they've been around here for, again, as Lonnie was saying, just more than a decade, connecting the community and developing a jazz art audience with three focus areas, one being education, another being performance, and third being musicianship supporting the breadth of musicianship here in the Charlotte area. So Lonnie, in terms of performances, obviously that's been very difficult. Troy can probably attest to this, putting on live performances during the stay-at-home mandate, being in venues which have been closed for a few months now. So how has the Jazz Arts Charlotte been able to pivot to still, allow a stage for musicians to showcase their work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Initially, we weren't sure what to do, honestly, because we thought, well, this will last a few weeks, and then we'll be right back at the stage door doing Jazz Room and everything that we plan to do. But we quickly realized that that was not the case, and had to pivot. And so with that, we have introduced some new programs that are online. One being Conversations with Curtis. Curtis, for those of you who may not know Curtis Davenport, is a former board member, but he is definitely the voice of our monthly concert series, The Jazz Room. He's our MC, he's a jazz historian, a wealth of knowledge, but Curtis hosts a show every other week called Conversations with Curtis, and he sits down and he speaks to musicians, local, regional, nationally renowned jazz musicians and supporters of the music. And Troy's been on the program before, but we really try to hear from musicians like Troy, who are absolutely, important and essential to the work that we do here at Jazz Art Charlotte. We could not do any of the work, education, performance, if it weren't for, the amazingly talented artists like Troy, who helped to make that happen. And so we went right into that program, and then because we are always, wanting to give our audiences what they wanted more performance. And so with that, we launched a new program. It's a live stream called Live from Crown. And Crown is actually Crown Station. It's a pub and coffee house in the Noda area. And they've been so very kind to sponsor and allow us to use their space as a venue to do our live streaming. And we have, over the last, I'd say, 2.5 months, been able to feature, some amazing local and regional musicians playing their music, and of course, socially distanced on stage. But that's been a lot of fun, and that way we've been able to really try and keep our audiences engaged and bring them some music and support musicians in the process.
Yeah. Troy, as a music educator and obviously a musician in your own right, how have the last few months for you been in trying to deal with the lack of connection to people through music?
Well, it's definitely been difficult. And I've had to learn a lot of technology really quick, to keep things going. And I guess that's good in some ways. But yeah, with teaching, majority of my teaching is private one-on-one lessons, and it has been for a long time. So it was really quite difficult to adjust to just looking at a student on the screen, and you can't manipulate anyone's fingers. It's hard to show, and you have to do, okay, well, this here, and then the connection drops out. And so there's been some frustrating things. But, like anything else, you kind of do it, and you kind of find your groove and find your way that you can manipulate it and make it work. Some students, surprisingly, really love it, which I don't, but, I'd much rather be in the same room with a student. And some hate it. Some are just, well, we can't, why can't we just meet outside? And I was like, well, they're going to get mad at us if I show up and do so. It's, we just find ways to make it work. But the lack of human connection with the student is, I think, what's the most difficult for me in teaching. And surprisingly, some of the material was actually easy to teach, and we've done things like share videos as well. And so, just try to find a way to make the best of it.
Lonnie, what has your experience been in trying to pivot Jazz Art Charlotte's programming in terms of the educational programming? Obviously, we're in the second week now of CMS, of Charlotte-Mecklenburg County school systems, schools being open. And we've heard the highs and lows of the process for educators, the students, and even the parents. So what have been the conversations taking place at Jazz Art Charlotte to encourage jazz education when things are different now?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have been trying to be as in tune to what's going on, not just here in CMS and with our local educators, but on a national scale, listening to what others are doing, what has been, successful for them, and trying to incorporate that into what we are doing. And we're very, very excited because we just launched some new educational programs for the fall. And some of them are programs that we've been wanting to do for a very long time, but we are now in a position to do them. We didn't realize they would be virtual, but they are. And so because education is at the foundation of who we are, as an organization, we have, launched some new virtual online youth programs like youth workshops, jazz workshops, that kind of take the place of our in-person youth ensembles program that has been somewhat of a flagship program for us. So we're going to continue that program. We're also doing some guitar workshops, and I'm really excited that Troy will be teaching a youth guitar session as well as an adult guitar session. We have drum workshops, and we have some other cool things. But what I'm also very excited about is the fact that we will be able to also start our adult educational programs. And we've tried to offer a broad range of offerings this fall, because this is really, I see this as a time and an opportunity actually for individuals to do some self-assessment, do some introspective looking, and really just growing and developing, and looking, seeking, their passions, and kind of going after and exploring things that they haven't had a chance to go after before. So really trying to make that into, really a positive instead of, it being a negative, because it's really easy for you to fall into a slump, right now, and for, things to look, really bad. And, I know some friends that are dealing with some depression right now, and it's a real thing. And so our goal was to be able to offer programs that will, maybe uplift folks and brighten someone's perspective by allowing them an opportunity to explore some things that they may have always wanted to explore. So with that, we're offering an adult jazz appreciation class that is going to look at the year 1959 in jazz, which was which was the year, in jazz. Many people like to argue, but we have great new faculty members, Dr. Kelsey Kloitz, who will be teaching that class. And then we have some drum workshops for adults, guitar that I mentioned, and also some improv and jazz classes and fundamentals for adults. And so it's going to be exciting, because I know too many times I've had people to say, "Hey, Lonnie, do you do, what you do for the kids? Do you guys do some of that for adults?" And I have I used to play in college, or I used to play in high school, and, I sure would like to get back on my axe, my instrument. And so now is the time. This is the opportunity, as Charlie Parker said, now's the time. And so, to pick up those horns, I have mine right here. I've been doing a lot of that myself, dust to put, wiping the dust off, and really, just using this time and trying to make it a positive experience, and a positive time to really, go deep, and to make it, a great experience for yourself, and to grow from it. So.
Yeah, we've heard from a number of musicians on this program over the past few months who've said that they've had a wide range of options of how to react given the pandemic and everything going around us. And one of the things they've tried to focus on is how can they reinvest in themselves and their musical pursuits and their passions, or even exploring new things that they didn't have the time or space to do previously. So, but again, for those just joining us, we're here with Lonnie Davis, the president and CEO of Jazz Arts Charlotte. We're also here with Troy Conn, a musician and a music educator attached to Jazz Arts Charlotte. You can find more information about all the programming that Lonnie was just sharing on thejazzarts.org. And also you can follow them on social media. So we actually do have some questions coming in, some comments on facebook.com/WFAE. Thank you all for joining us again for this final broadcast of Songversations. We have a question here from David, and this is related to Troy. And actually, Troy, I think it's a good transition to our next Thelonious Monk song you have lined up. Okay. David asks, how many strings does Troy's guitar have?
Oh, 7. So everything's normal. Let me turn the volume. Everything's normal from the top down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I have an extra 7th string, which is tuned to a low A, and that would be the same A that is on a bass.
There you go, David. So thanks for asking that question of Troy here. So Troy, as I just mentioned, you're here not only to talk about your music work with Lonnie, but also to share some of that love of live music, even if it is with a rectangular screen. So you have lined up a song for us here of 1956 by someone that folks in North Carolina probably are familiar with. If you're not, I'm sure you can give some more context. Tell us a little bit about this song where you're about to perform.
So the name of this tune is "We See." This is by North Carolina native Thelonious Monk. So yes, people from North Carolina should know that this guy is from your state. We have a lot of other greats. Coltrane being one, which is a new mural. Everyone should go drive out to go see the mural. But this is a tune that Monk wrote, and it was originally titled "Wee Tea," and I want to say it was after Wee Tea was. Gosh, I might get it. I'm afraid to say, as especially on the radio, but I want to say it's niece or somebody, Anyway, that was the original name of this song, and then somewhere along the way, it got retitled to "We See." And I love playing Monk's tunes. You never know what's going to happen when you play a Thelonious Monk song. And I have a little 10-month-old baby at home. And he likes this one a lot, so a lot of songs I play at the house are songs he likes. So this is Thelonious Monk's "We See."
That was wonderful. Troy Conn
Oh,
performing
thank you.
live on WFAE Songversations. In case you're wondering what he was playing, it was a rendition of 1956 "We See." done by jazz pianist, composer, and North Carolina native Thelonious Monk. If you're wanting to hear more of Troy Conn's music, his original compositions and work, you can find it on troyconn.com. His 2018 full-length release is titled Old and New. Today on WFAE's final edition, our live final broadcast of Songversations, we're joined by Troy as well as Lonnie Davis, the president and the CEO of Jazz Art Charlotte. We're talking about music, we're talking about quarantine creativity, we're talking about the state of the world during pandemic. So all the big topics. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to share with our guests today, by all means, feel free to put them in the comments below on facebook.com/WFAE. And for those that are just joining us, welcome. You're welcome to listen back and watch this archived version of Songversations as soon as it's done at 1 o'clock on facebook.com/WFAE and on WFAE.org. So folks, we do have a few folks that are chiming in the comments on facebook.com, one of which comes from our dear listener and audience member Lloyd, who says, Lonnie, I will never forget you and Osi, Lonnie's husband, and others at the Mint Museum honoring Romare Bearden, his art and his jazz music. Lloyd, thank you for that comment. You know, it actually brings up a good point. And a transition from what we just heard from Troy performing, Lonnie, is that North Carolina and the Charlotte region just filled with talented jazz music creatives. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about North Carolina and Charlotte's role in this landscape of jazz creation.
Oh, wow. You know, when I first got here, I didn't know what to expect. And for those of you who may not know, I'm not from Charlotte. I'm originally from New Orleans, which is, you know, why I mentioned Gulf Coast earlier, because my mind is actually on what's happening there right now with the hurricane and the 15th anniversary to Hurricane Katrina, which is why I'm wearing my fleur-de-lis shirt, you know, to, you know, kind of keep those folks in my thoughts and my prayers right now, you know, as they deal with that, as if a pandemic is not enough. But when we got here, we didn't know what to expect. And Troy was actually one of the first musicians that we met and we had an opportunity to work with. So it's really cool because, you know, we've been knowing Troy a really long time. But it is unbelievable the amount of talent that is found right here in Charlotte. But, you know, if you cast a broader net, certainly in our state and in our region, they're world-class musicians right here in Charlotte and right here in the Charlotte region. And we're really, really privileged to have these, you know, musicians of that caliber so close, you know, to us and in our own backyard. And a lot of people don't realize how much talent is right here. And a lot of folks, as Troy was mentioning earlier, don't realize the history of jazz and the impact that this area, you know, has had on jazz history. Some folks don't know, you know, that, you know, Thelonious Monk and, you know, Max Roach, and some people don't know Ella Fitzgerald was actually born in North Carolina. So, yeah, Nina Simone. I mean, the list goes on. And if you want to cross the state line, Dizzy Gillespie in South Carolina. And so, you know, there's a heritage or a history, you know, of great jazz musicians from our region. And so we, you know, from an educational perspective, always make sure that the students in our jazz academy is aware. They're aware that, you know, this is who we are, you know, as a community, and they could be, you know, the next, you know, if they just put in the work. I mean, because it's in the ground, you know, of our region. And so, yeah, but it's always a pleasure to work with folks like Troy, and I can go down the list because each year we work with, you know, 100, you know, at least, you know, 150 musicians from the region. And yeah, we couldn't do the work that we do without those great guys and girls. And so yeah, it's a real pleasure.
Lonnie, you just mentioned a bit ago that while you have made your home here in North Carolina for more than a decade, you began your music career, you began your full love and life in New Orleans. And earlier this morning, Hurricane Laura made landfall in Louisiana. which is being called one of the region's strongest storms in over a century. But this weekend, as you were just mentioning, it marks the 15th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which is one of the worst storms in U.S. history and a storm that left a mark on your life and work. And I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit about what led you to, being here in Charlotte and working on the Jazz Art Charlotte initiative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit surreal, because every year around this time, there's this feeling, that I get, and I can't really describe it, but there is a heaviness that comes over me. And although me, and my family were not impacted by, a loss, of a family member, we certainly know we have many friends who have lost parents and, siblings, and the list goes on. So we are very close to people who have lost, had great loss due to Hurricane Katrina. But yeah, it's you know, and I always try to look at things, from a positive, because of course, if it weren't for the storm, we would not be, talking today, on Songversations. And so, but yeah, it's just a really, it's a really tough time for a lot of people who, have been uprooted and, just kind of spread across the country, like myself and my family. We chose Charlotte because we initially evacuated to a small town in Virginia, Christiansburg, which is where I was, continued studying for my graduate degree at Virginia Tech. When the storm was actually, right after the storm had happened. But one of my neighbors suggested that we look into Charlotte because they knew, that Charlotte was a growing city, and a city that, supported young families and was bound to have a jazz scene. And they knew that we were musicians. And so we looked into it. And on our third visit to Charlotte, we thought, wow, this is it. And so we literally, without having any connections to Charlotte, no friends, no family, we picked up everything that we had and we moved here, and not with the thought to start an organization that supported jazz and supported education and brought musicians and the community together. But after a few months, we realized what we could bring, based on our experience of being musicians and doing this work, some of this work in New Orleans. And so that's how the idea, for Jazz Art Charlotte kind of came about, and here we are.
Here we are with all the programs that you all put on, all the live events, all the educational initiatives. Troy, since you were born and raised here in Charlotte, you've been here for quite some time making music, and you're obviously attached as a music educator and performer to Jazz Art Charlotte. Can you share a little bit about what it was like when Lonnie and Osi began this initiative, began this program and nonprofit in Charlotte?
Yeah, of course. I was, fortunate enough to kind of get on board at the ground level, and so it's been quite remarkable to see how strong and how well that it's grown, and really quite quickly. You think just 10 years, or 15, I guess however long, however long it's been, 10 years, right? So.
Yep, 11 this
11,
year.
11 years. Okay, I was thinking
Yeah.
it was more. Okay, so
Yeah.
just as which is not that long of a time, but for to do the scope of work that they've been able to accomplish. So yeah, I mean it's just fantastic, and it's great to have something kind of pulling people together and to set up these things, the educational part and the camps and the the weekly classes for youth and now the adult stuff, just bringing all this to the table and making it accessible to so many people. And I think that's a part that's been really great that they've done. It's just allowing people access and introducing people to it, and it's just been wonderful to see happen.
Thank you.
Oh.
And
Go ahead, Lonnie.
I just also wanted to add that so Troy was actually a part of a group that my husband OC started called the Queens Collective. And the Queens Collective was really the beginning of the idea, that we can start an organization. But it was at the foundation. So the idea, the concept was, he created this group of all-star, local musicians. So it was Troy on guitar, and at the time, Ashlyn Parker, who's a world-renowned trumpet player, Grammy-winning trumpet player. He now lives in New Orleans, but he's a Charlotte native. Ashlyn was in the group. We had Robert Beasley on the congas. He's now in Kansas City. We had Stephen Gordon on piano. We had, who do we have on bass? Ron Brindle on bass. We had, Carl Ratliff, who's a great educator and a faculty member also with Jazz Art Charlotte currently. And I feel like I'm missing someone, of course, OC on drums. Yeah. And I sat in on occasion on flute because I just had to. I mean, I had this band, like, why, I want some of this too. And so I sit in and, and they would play, all of these different events around town. And they got so much of a following, it was really creating a buzz, like, wow, you guys sound great. And, just the energy that came from that group really planted the seed, at least in my mind, like, wow, we could really do something more with this. We could, add an educational component to what it is you guys are doing. And that's how the idea of Jazz Art Charlotte or Jazz Arts Initiative kind of came about. But, Troy was certainly a part of that initial group. So you're right, Troy, you've been here from the beginning.
Those are such fond, such fond days. You're taking some time and like reminiscing, and like something, you'll see something or like going through old music and say, oh wow, why don't I remember that when we were some chart or those are the good old days.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Music can be a time capsule. I think especially during a pandemic when you're listening back to the yesteryears, or you're using this moment to say, yeah, we're going to make this music now so we're reminded of what it was like in this point of history. I think that's the beautiful thing about recordings. Again, for those that are just joining us today for WFAE's final version, our final live broadcast of Songversations, so happy that our final guests on this program are Troy Conn, a music educator and a musician in his own right here in Charlotte, alongside Lonnie Davis, the president and CEO of Jazz Arts Charlotte. You can find out more about their work at thejazzarts.org and also on troyconn.com. Of course, if you are wanting to follow them on social media, listen to their music, and support their work in the community, by all means, I encourage you to do so. Lonnie, the last time I spoke with you for something WFAE related, it was for the music podcast I host, and will continue to host. It's not going away like Songversations, called Amplifier. And you shared a quote that I want to share with the audience today that I just found so beautiful. And you said, "Jazz is America's classical music. This is our music as Americans. This music would not have been possible anywhere else in the world." And I bring that up, this idea of identity and what it is to be American, or, making American work and creative, because obviously the news and conversations have been dominated by politics and civil unrest and protests and demonstrations in recent months. And seeing how jazz had a critical role in the civil rights movement, from Nina Simone to Duke Ellington to many more artists. I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that and what we can learn from jazz as being a soundtrack for these conversations taking place.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Jazz, as you said, it's always been a reflection of our society, I think, and it really helps to put things into perspective. It puts us under a microscope in a sense, because the musicians who come together on stage in real time, they're bringing with them their experiences, who they are as people, and their ability or inability to work together, to listen to each other or not, but it is really the ultimate form of democracy. And it requires, working together coming to some understanding, because the music does provide a framework, but there's a whole lot of freedom in jazz. And so an individual could kind of run off and do it's his or her own thing musically, and it may not agree with what else is happening, in the music or with the other musicians. And so it's important, and I think jazz musicians particularly are always in tune, or have to be in tune, and willing to compromise and willing to give of themselves, and be open to forming a truce and an understanding with each other through the music. And I think that is certainly the case as it relates to what took place during the civil rights movement and all the social unrest that took place at that time, and what we're seeing now. I'm sure a lot of innovative, great music is going to come out of the time that we're living in right now. But it's always great to listen back, at where we have been, and you could hear it. It's all in the music. It's there. It's kind of like an archive, a document of our history. It comes through, in some of those old, recordings from the 60s and the late 50s. And, we as an organization, Jazz Arts, will be referencing some of that in the near future. And I can't really speak to it right now, but we will be referencing where we are, as a community today, and, what we've been dealing with as it relates to social injustice and the unrest that we've faced. And so we will have, a creative response to that real soon.
The last few months have put a lot of things in perspective for the community. The hardships of being able to find technology or Wi-Fi, and even just the time and space to be devoted to something like this, or the work that we're doing and balancing personal and professional relationships. The list goes on. So given the work of the Jazz Arts Initiative and what you've been seeing, Lonnie, how are you building a new future? How are you going to create programming given what is taking place over the last 5 months to fit the need and needs of the community?
Yeah, I think that is the key. That is the key. I think it's very important that we and everyone are very flexible right now, and are willing to adapt to our new environment, because we're not who we were 5 months ago. We're not, and we may not ever go back there. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to accept, but I think it's true. It's the reality. And so, from an organizational perspective, it is important for us to keep our ears and our eyes on what the community wants, what individuals need to serve them best, to cope, with what is going on in their lives. So we will certainly continue to provide not only these educational programs that will help to expand an individual's desires and their passions, around music. And but we'll also, try to stay in tune to what musicians and what the artists need, because that's at the root of what we do. And if musicians don't have the support that they need, then we cannot, as an organization, we cannot function. So the artists are always at number one for us, making sure that that they're very much supported, and that through their work and through their passion, we are able to offer and execute other programs to the youth, to adults, and to other segments of our community. So I think the key is for us to always be flexible and like water, and able to easily adapt to new environments, as this continues to develop in front of us.
Yeah. And speaking of appreciating and supporting artists, we have a number of comments coming in on facebook.com/WFAE for today's final rendition of Songversations. A comment from Wayne who said, Troy is such a great player. We are lucky to have him around here. That's just one of a few comments relating to Troy's musical efforts and work, and especially his live performances today on Songversations.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Troy, you're not done yet. We have another performance lined up from you today for this hour.
Of course, yeah.
So we have this one coming up, and it's a popular jazz standard from 1931. I love how you're taking deep cuts for today's Songversations. Tell us a little bit about the song that you chose for today.
Was another one I've been playing. During quarantining or lockdown, this time of it's an old standard, Beautiful Love. And I've always liked this tune, and Lonnie said something earlier about taking this time and reflecting and using it as a positive way. And I think there are a lot of musicians doing that. And one of my reflections was, why don't I know these tunes? Someone calls the songs that I love. Why don't I know these? And if you're trying to fix discrepancies in your playing, and so I was like, well, I'm going to learn it. So this is one of the first songs I learned in quarantine. I said, I'm going to sit down and learn this tune. And I had a couple records and trying to learn it off records and not just the fake book, This tune was originally written in 3/4, but the famous Bill Evans recording is in 4/4, which is how I'm going to play it. And gosh, I know it's Anthony Newley, and I can't remember the other composer's name. Leslie. I'm gonna get it right. Here I am on the radio messing up people's composers' names.
It's Wayne King, Victor Young, and Egbert Van Alsten.
That's right. I was thinking of the other two. Yeah, Wayne King, Victor Young. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you for performing it.
I kind of it's just a tune I've always liked, and I've been playing it, and again, it just constantly evolves and changes and does different things, and so this is Beautiful Love.
Wonderful. That was great.
Oh, thank you so much.
One of my favorite parts of doing
Beautiful.
Songversations is that I almost have like a personal concert taking place in front of me. You can't see my face, but I'm just like, me and Lonnie were just dancing along,
Oh,
listening to Troy Conn performing that. That was wonderful.
oh,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
Oh,
much.
much.
yeah.
And of course,
Beautiful.
Troy, that performance was of the popular jazz standard from 1931, Beautiful Love. You can follow more of Troy's work as a musician on his website, troyconn.com. And we're joined here not only by Troy, but Lonnie Davis of the Jazz Arts Charlotte. You can find out more about their work in educating and creating performances and inspiring the Charlotte area musicianship at thejazzarts.org. Today on Songversations, we were joined by Lonnie and Troy talking about their work in and around Charlotte music, and especially during COVID-19. If you missed any of today's Songversations, you missed out on a lot of great things. So make sure you go and watch it. The archive version will be available in just a few minutes on facebook.com/WFAE, WFAE.org, where you can watch the entirety of our 5 months of doing Songversations here online. Lonnie, as we are wrapping up today's Songversations in the next few moments, my final question to you is what advice, what words of inspiration would you give to the music community as we are still facing this lockdown, as we're still facing, the venues still being closed, and we're still kind of staying indoors? What advice, what inspiration would you give to the musicians here in the Charlotte area?
I would encourage them to hang in there and know that they are valuable and that we need them. We need the venues, we need the artists, and so I just want them to know that there is going to be a light at the end of this tunnel. Not sure how long the tunnel's going to be, but we will get out of this, and I think the music scene will be even more, stronger than ever, and people will appreciate. If they didn't appreciate it as much pre-COVID, they will certainly appreciate musicians and the music, following this interesting time. And so I think we have no place else to go but, up. So we have a lot to look forward to.
And we, again, thank you to everyone who's joining us today and leaving comments and questions on facebook.com/WFAE. I want to end with this comment from one of our audience folks today, Calvin, who said, "Lonnie, you and OC always represent Jazz Arts Charlotte with excellence."
Thank you. Thank you, Calvin. Wonderful.
And again, thank you to Lonnie and thank you to Troy for joining us for Songversations today. You both were wonderful guests. Thank you for helping us wrap
Thank
up
you,
this
Joni.
program series.
No, thank you, Joni. This has been a pleasure. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
work
this
of
has really been a blast.
WFAE. Absolutely. Great.
Well, appreciate that. And again, appreciate everyone who's joining us today. Follow up on their work, again, at thejazzarts.org and also on troyconn.com. Today was the final edition, the final rendition, the final live broadcast of WFAE Songversations, this 5-month-long video series where we highlighted the songs and stories of Charlotte musicians and music advocates from the comfort of home during COVID-19, civil unrest, hurricane season, everything that life has thrown at us as music fans and music creators. Of course, you are more than welcome to explore Charlotte music scene on your own terms. Even though the series has ended, go support music, go listen to music, go download and purchase and make sure that artistry is still going to be alive and well when we are finally able to see each other in person. Now more than ever, your support is needed. I hope you also can support WFAE.org and all the work that Charlotte's NPR news sources provided during and long after this quarantine stay-at-home mandate has occurred. I've been your host, Joni Deutsch. I will continue being the host of WFAE's Amplifier podcast, which also explores Charlotte music, but in a non-visual way, so no more hair and makeup for me. You can find the podcast at WFAE.org/amplifier, and wherever you find podcasts, a new episode is available right now if you want to go listen to it. Until I see you all again, I've been Joni Deutsch. I'll be Joni Deutsch, but not on video. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, your week, and that you stay informed, you stay inspired, and that you stay creative. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.